Welcome to Gagliardi's Got Real Estate Podcast, hosted by myself, Gerald, Sabri, and Rocky Gagliardi. We look forward to bringing you something fresh, something new the Goulburn Valley hasn't seen before, more informative information. We've got special guests, hot topics. Make sure you follow on your preferred podcast platform, GSRE socials. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Together, we're very fortunate enough today to have Rebecca Finnigan and Nicole Demise join us, two wonderful ladies that are specialised in the legal field and just here to sort of answer some questions for us today, and they'll obviously help the audience out there with sort of the day-to-day situations. Gerald?
Yeah. Welcome, ladies.
Gerald.
Thank you.
Welcome to our first episode, everyone, and it's great to have you both. We'll just start with just introducing you both and your field of expertise.
Yep.
Rebecca?
So I'm Rebecca Finnigan, or Rebecca Finnigan. I'm a licensed conveyancer and owner at Sargeants Conveyancing, Goulburn Valley. So it's a business that started about 9 years ago down at Nagambie, where I'm from. And I've been doing conveyancing for nearly 30 years, working for firms both in Melbourne and the Goulburn Valley. After I had my son 9 years ago, I was at home one day and my dad had actually sold his house and I wasn't working, and I said to him, I'll do you conveyancing, but I wasn't licensed or registered. And I walked down the street and the guy who he brought the house from pulled me up and said, I didn't know that you had a conveyancing business. I said, oh no, we're just self-acting, I don't. And he said to me, you should look into that, you'd have a really good business. And it just planted the seed. And from there, I picked up the phone one day and went off and got my qualification and my licence and hoped to get, a job a week, and now we've just opened an office at 632 Wyndham Street. I'm lucky to be supported by two great staff, and we really love what we do.
Fantastic start. Isn't it amazing what a phone call does and what, something happens and then you're away. That's how most successful things start. You've been very successful.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Nicole?
I'm Nicole Demise. I work at SMR Legal. I have worked there for the past nearly 8 years. I've had a stint in Melbourne. I started my legal career back in 1998, so a long time ago now. And I started off as a PA, so I've worked in all different areas of law. I've worked in litigation, injury work, property work, wills and estates, and now I'm solely in property. So SMR Legal is a small firm based in Nixon Street, and I think there's probably about 20 of us there. It's a good place to work. So
yeah, fantastic. So I suppose we do obviously a lot of it. We can't have everyone on. But I suppose with the appeal with you both is that we've obviously do a lot of deals in the last 2 years, and we've dealt with a lot of other professionals obviously in the industry, and the boom, I've been through, I think this is almost a third boom. Nothing ever like this. Like I've never, ever experienced, anything like what we've been through in the last 3 years. I mean, so the volume and the stress of the work that you both would have experienced, we experience it. Obviously, a lot of conversations come up, a lot of naive sort of buyers, which happens. I mean, all the time. So we probably would love to get an insight as to what is the most common questions. Said to us what a Section 32 is. I mean, we talk to clients and we say you need to get a Section 32 if you're getting your house for sale up and going, probably the importance of that and the difference between that and, a sales contract. And
a lot of people do think that the Section 32 and the contract are the same thing. Yeah. That's what I find. Do you think the same thing? Yeah.
So, we encourage people at the time of listing a property to start that Section 32, because if they've got it there ready to go, it typically takes us about a week and a half to put that document together. Mm-hmm. So if it's there, we can supply it to the agent. They can provide it to any prospective buyers who may sometimes want to see that document before starting negotiations. So
it also speeds the process up too, from the time that you guys accept the offer, or the vendor vendor accepts the offer. So it speeds that process up. So the turnaround time is not you know 1 to 2 weeks anymore.
Yeah.
It's bang, you can have a contract out within sort of 24, 48 hours.
And that helps. That helps speed up. Typically contracts will be signed with finance clauses triggered by the signing of the contract. So for the 32s there, as soon as the property's sold, the agent will send the sales instructions. Contracts can go straight out, and we can get them signed and exchanged. And everyone's working to a tighter time frame, and settlement dates are guaranteed.
I suppose from our perspective, Gerald, we see a lot of buyers, and the pandemic as such has created a lot of regional, obviously people coming from Melbourne and the metropolitan cities. The metro mentality has been, always see a Section 32 before they do anything. It's just the way they've been educated. We're a bit different. We're probably more of the handshake agreement. That's sort of gone out the window a little bit too, obviously, with the way things are. But it's important. I know we try to educate our vendors to get a Section 32 before they put it for sale. Simply as soon as we sign them up, we, for an authority, we basically tell them to get it going, because, like you think, it speeds up. Finances can take 2 to 3 weeks.
Minimum at the moment. Gone are the 14-day finance approval periods. They're just not a thing
21
anymore.
days to get a finance approval, more or less, and then we're different from Melbourne. So you're 21 days, but if you've waited 2 weeks for a contract to be ready,
that's right.
It basically impatience, the nerves, the frustration, the stress, all builds up, especially for an anxious vendor or an anxious buyer, and so forth.
I think it just alleviates a lot of the stress for everyone, not just for us. I think too for everyone to have that Section 32, because some certificates that we order, so we will order council land information certificate, the water information statement from GB Water. Depends. There could be owners' corporations. If there's those things too, they take
10 business days.
And we're not talking in days anymore. Everything is business days, which makes it even longer.
Slows
it right down.
I actually reckon it should be law if you put your house for sale. You should have a Section 32 before you start.
I think in New South Wales you have to have those documents ready before you market your property for sale. So
like often we'll sit down with a vendor at the time of signing a contract and just explain that the finance period, whatever that won't start until the contracts are signed by both parties. So sometimes vendors weren't always aware of that. And they feel that I agreed to the offer a week ago and I've still got to wait another 2 or 3 weeks before the sold sticker's on the board. But the way the banks work is they won't order a valuation until they see that signed contract, and hence why the contract has to be in place before the bank can supply it to the valuers and order that val.
So explain the importance, obviously, to the layman out there. A Section 32 is the hard bit. The contract's the easy bit. Once we get an accepted offer, potentially time permitting, a couple of hours you've got a contract up, right? It's just
depends on the complexity of the transaction.
Complexity, but the basic transaction.
Basic transaction.
You look in a couple. So that's the easy bit.
So the Section 32 is a disclosure statement, and it forms part of the contract. So the vendor is required to disclose information about the property in that Section 32, so far as the title and encumbrances, planning scheme rates, building approvals and services connected. And the contract is really just a contract to buy and sell, and between the parties, and stipulates the terms and conditions. So. So that's sort of the difference between those two documents. But they are, the purchaser has to be provided with a Section 32 prior to signing a contract to sale.
It is a condition. It is a condition of that contract.
It's amazing so many vendors don't
understand that.
Yes.
And we see it all the time as agents. And then you're actually going through the whole process with them, the importance of it. Especially in a market where we've come from, of COVID, it was even more important.
Yes.
The amount of volume of buyers were very quick, and they're all wanting that 32. Like, you'd be very regimented in getting your process right, and that's really important. Not just for the purchaser, but the agent to understand the product. And you've got full confidence with your respective buyers.
I think a lot of agents now have taken the approach of you list your house, you get the vendor statement ready. It just, like I said before, it just takes the pressure off everyone.
So when the level of motivation.
That's true.
It does.
And obviously with the period we've just been through, the boom, as you referred to, Rocky.
Extraordinary boom.
Yeah, it sure was. A lot of people wanted to cash in on that, especially like a lot of vendors wanted to cash in on that. So they didn't want to wait 2 weeks for the purchaser to, you know, find another property or go cold or change their mind. They wanted to get that person signed up then and there.
The flip side too, the buyers the same.
Yeah.
Like, so they didn't want to wait 2 weeks for a sale.
No, they
thinking
didn't.
Someone else is going to come up from
That's
underneath
right,
with a sale. So it was, the motivation was high on both sides.
That's right.
So having a 32 is extremely important
Very
for you.
important.
I think it probably can't emphasise how
Essential.
important it is.
Yes.
Essential.
So we talked about the volume and the
Yeah.
sales and obviously the amount, obviously the boom we've had. What are the common questions, besides, let's forget about the contract start of it, but what are the common questions or the naivety of buyers, obviously?
One of the ones that I've found the most is, especially with purchases, they tell us that they have their loan's been approved.
Yes.
And I would say to them, okay, so is it formally approved or is it just been conditionally approved? You know, if you've got pre-approval, oh no, we've got pre-approval.
Yeah.
So then you've got to go through the process of explaining. Pre-approval is not formal approval. So pre-approval is just based on the information that you plug into the computer, and it tells you how much you can borrow. Or you've spoken to your broker and they've said, okay, you know, based on your income, you can borrow this much.
Yes.
If the valuation doesn't stack up, you don't get that formal approval. So a lot of purchasers, that's what I find back. A lot of purchasers think that pre-approval is formal approval, and it's not. Yeah.
And obviously, buyers' circumstances change with the job.
That's
and with
right.
the approvals. You've got a 3-month window potentially, I think. Which
That's
is
right,
expiry date.
yeah. And during COVID, I don't know about you, Beck, but I found a lot of banks were checking employment statuses of borrowers right through to the settlement date.
Yeah.
And I did have the instance a couple of times where funding was withdrawn at the last minute. And so, you know, they had to scramble around and try and find funding again because their employment circumstances had changed in that period. So it is also important too for any purchasers out there, if you are borrowing, make sure your employment status stays the same until...
So emphasise the importance of that, Nicole. Like, you get the settlement date, day before, the bank double checks again. And all of a sudden, how does that expose the buyer? Because, you know, no one's going to come up with a couple $100,000 in a minute.
No.
Like,
No.
All of a sudden, they've lost a deposit, I'm guessing, if they don't come up the money.
Potentially, if they can't. If they,
so the exposure's really big, eh?
That's right. Well, the vendor may not grant them an extension to the settlement date. They may also grant them that extension, but they also may serve a notice of default on them, which means then they have to pay interest on top of whatever's owing. So that at the moment is calculated under the contract at 12%. So that's 12% on all monies outstanding for the period of default. You potentially, if you can't settle at the end of that 14 days, then you potentially lose that deposit. So, you know,
I won't go any further. They could get sued further.
No, that's it. But that's the risk. That's the risk that a purchaser takes if they do change employment or all their financial circumstances change in that time.
I think too, it's a great point made there. It is really important too for purchasers to get the contract in Section 32 reviewed by a conveyancer prior to signing. So because... you know, that's the opportunity to sit down and go through the vendor statement, talk about the conveyancing transaction.
Yeah, Beck, I'm going to cut in there.
Yeah.
Vendor statement and Section 32.
Section 2. It's the exact same thing.
Fantastic,
It's the exact same thing.
A lot of people go, what's the difference?
Yeah.
So we confuse. So just to clear, a vendor statement and Section 32, exactly the
We
same.
call it a vendor statement.
Yeah.
You guys call it a Section 32.
Same thing.
Because conveyancing, I find, it's not just about the paperwork. It's about understanding the client, their reason for sale and or purchase, and the motive behind it. Because it's often not until you sit down and talk to your client and get an understanding of their reason for selling, for buying, or maybe doing both, that that's our opportunity to sort of identify issues before they arise throughout the transaction. So I am seeing a big trend at the moment of a lot of people selling and buying at the same time, whether they're downsizing, or upsizing. Some people haven't really stopped to think, okay, well, I need to make my purchase contract conditional upon my sale contract becoming an unconditional contract. and vice versa. And so sitting down with the conveyancer at the start before any paperwork's signed is very important, because our role is to identify if there's a need to include additional special conditions, working out timeframes for those. And just ensuring that it's a seamless transaction that's going to settle on due dates. Yep. And commonly with people buying and selling, you've got settlement dates that, are simultaneous. So the conveyancers are a good vehicle for trying to help people with the logistics of moving. We can, try and put in place license agreements or other, other documents that enable the client to maybe get early access, just to help with that moving process. So those things I find
actually a really good point.
Are really good. So please get your documents reviewed prior to signing. And I think here in the Goulburn Valley, we do that a lot. So and that's the difference between us and sort of Melbourne.
While they trust the agent to sell the process, we sign them up and everything, but I think there's a confidence in a conveyancer or lawyer that they divulge a lot more, your motive, which, the relationship with an agent and the legal fraternity, and we're lucky in Shepparton because I think 99.9% of everyone we deal with are very good, So for us, you don't have to tell us what's going on, but if we talk to you, you can go, listen, there's a bit more going on without divulging the confidence, and it gives us a sense of satisfaction. We can go back to the vendor or the purchaser and sort of talk. So that's important to know. That's a very good point of the relationship. With what I'd like to know is and this is I've probably left field a bit, is dealing with Melbourne conveyancers and Melbourne, and there's some really good ones, but there's some really ordinary ones.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
And it's very frustrating.
Yes, you are right. There are some really good ones.
So, and a different mentality, isn't it?
It's just a different process.
Yeah. So how do you both find that when you adapt to that sort of situation?
I love dealing locally.
Yeah.
I can't beat a local deal. I want my mum and dad.
We all on the same page.
Dealing with the local agents, the local brokers, everyone.
It just helps the process for everyone. Yeah. If you know the people, you know how they work. Yeah. You can. I can pick up the phone and say, Gerald, this isn't going to work because of this reason or something like that, or this person isn't happy because of this, we need to rejig this or something. Melbourne, I find a lot lately, the law firms or the conveyancing firms will not organise the signing of the documents.
Frustrating for us.
It's the agents who have to arrange that, which I find just amazing. I mean, because they've prepared the agent hasn't prepared the documents.
They want us to take the legal onus.
That's right. And I just find that strange.
It's hard to get used to as an agent. You don't feel obligated to sign that client up. They just want to see a full executed contract, some both parties,
pretty much.
Be able to get settlement underway.
So, I mean, don't want to talk to you until you've got a signed contract.
A lot.
It's just a transaction to them.
That's all it is. Right. They're just collecting a fee and that's it. That's volume.
Which really sometimes clients don't understand, and cheap's not always cheaper.
No, well, this is true too.
The
cheap ones.
So that's what we see a lot. A lot through land transactions and houses, of course, but it makes life hard for everyone. You don't have a relationship.
No.
And you're flying a bit blind, and they're hard to contact sometimes.
And I don't know about you, Beck. Like I love it when I get repeat people come back, or I get a new client call in and say such and such told me to call you because they really liked the way you worked, or they thought you were great or something like that. That I think that's the best referral that you can get.
Word of mouth is the best.
So one of the processes of a sales mainly is obviously subject to finance, subject to building, subject to pest. Well, we've pretty much touched the subject to finance part, but the building and pest, how do you find that situation, obviously with nervous buyers and obviously anxious vendors? How does that process, how do you find dealing with people with
buyers, there used to be a trend where a building report would be done and they'd say, there's some cornice, that's come down that needs to be replaced, just cosmetic issues. And we would then go back and say, okay, well, these things need to be fixed. I don't know about you, Beck, but I've seen lately vendors are just no.
Yeah.
No. So I
Is that
told.
because of the power, Nicole? I mean, the boom we've had
I
sort of
think
recently?
so.
Yeah.
I think so because there's
Leverage they
always
have, yeah.
because in that time there's always someone who was willing to take it in the condition it was in.
Yes.
So so why would the vendor do things they
Yeah.
don't have to do?
Yeah.
So I explained to my purchaser, it depends on at what point they've obtained those reports.
Yeah.
So if they've signed a contract conditional upon a pest and building report, the actual majority of those conditions say that the purchaser's only right is to withdraw from the contract in the event of live termites being identified or a major structural defect. So as far as identifying minor structural defects, it doesn't leave the purchaser with any rights. We do see a lot where purchasers will get the reports prior to sitting down to sign the contract. And they may say to us, you know, look, there's some things here. You know, we certainly say, look, we're happy to ask the question of the vendor.
We'll try.
We're here to act on your instructions. But I do point out to them that they have brought as inspected. So anything that they've visually cited at the time of walking through the property, you know, they've really deemed to accept that property in that condition and state of repair, and the vendor does have the right to refuse to do those
And look,
works.
That's exactly
majority
right.
of the time they're buying a pre-loved home. So they,
Exactly.
They've looked at a 30-year-old home. They know
That's-
they've already
that's-
seen it. People
Yeah.
aren't silly. They've seen it. It brings us to the point, though, which is to final inspection and what you advise your clients about your final inspections and so forth. And run us through that and what the pitfalls could be.
I say to them, unless there is a hole in the wall that wasn't there before, there's nothing we can do. You need to take it as it is because the contract specifically says fair wear and tear.
Yes.
Specifically.
Yes. Right.
Obviously, a hole in the wall is not fair wear and tear.
Yes.
But, you know, scuff marks, instances, things like that. There's nothing you can do. And goods in working order. If the goods are in working order, so your oven, dishwasher, cooktop, rain chilled, those sort of things, if they were in working order, I always send my purchasers. So with my purchasers, they'll come in, we'll go through the contract. I'll say to them, have you checked the goods? No, I haven't. Okay, you need to ring the agent, make another appointment, go back. I know you guys sometimes get annoyed with us for that.
It is frustrating, but
I understand.
We understand. But a lot of...
But it saves their headache
Yes, but
at
also
the end.
Am I right in saying the vendor can warrant that they'll be in working order for settlement?
The vendor can, but a lot of times too, we'll get to the end, they'll do the final inspection and they'll say, well, that wasn't working. Well, then we're in a...
But if they've warranted it, though? If the vendor's warranted it was working?
yes.
They would have to.
Then they have to, yeah.
So we get a warrant for it.
We never get it where the vendor warrants it, where they always say, no, it wasn't working. So we need that proof and we need to be sure. And the purchaser needs to make themselves
It's
comfortable
pretty good
with
these
that.
days. I remember once upon a time, it'd be very poor. People used to rip stoves out, fans out. They used to wait till the last minute, rip them out. So you've got any stories like that now that are recently happened?
Well, I had a client who removed every curtain in the house.
Wow. And it was in the contract.
It was in the contract. And I'm not sure... it had settled, so whether the purchaser, I was acting for the vendor, hadn't conducted a final inspection, and then I had a phone call, so I very swiftly rang my client and told him he needed to get back there quick smart and reinstate the curtains in the house. So
that was an innocent probably thing.
Yeah, he said to me quite innocently, but I brought them.
So naivety and really not realising the contract.
And it would have been specified in the particulars.
So the malicious though, and I don't think it's relevant these days as much, but back once upon a time, we used to have people put things in like fixed air conditioning, like the ducted vac heating and cooling. Why it's fixed? But people rip things out. I like to make sure, if I'm acting on behalf of a purchaser, I like to make sure that the goods are listed.
Yes.
Like an itemised list. So then that way, when you get to settlement or the day before settlement and the air conditioner is missing, you can say this house is sold or this property is sold with an air conditioner. So bring it back. Or put a new one in.
As an agent, you get used to putting just more is better.
Yes.
You know,
That's right.
Whether it's
That's
proper
debatable.
fixture,
Yeah.
you still...
Yeah,
That's debatable.
some
I know
things,
sometimes
yeah.
I put less is better, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen
Less arguments.
I've seen a lot of people just saying
Yes.
as fixed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
But
that
that-
could
What's that
mean
mean, though?
anything.
Yeah.
That could mean anything.
Anything.
It doesn't cover
Yeah.
curtains.
No.
It, you know, those sort of things. Doesn't cover light fittings.
Yeah.
Those sort of things.
So a common thing I've also come across with final inspections, and I'd say to vendors, if you have television brackets and hooks in walls and things like that, leave them. It'll cause more damage removing them. And, you know, I've often had, you know, purchasers go and do a final inspection, brackets have been removed and the holes haven't been patched and repaired and repainted, and even if they have been done, it hasn't been to the best quality standards. So leave the hooks in the walls, leave the brackets. It'll look better just left as is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
The other one I want to just quickly touch on, I think it's pretty important, is when you ladies do your vendor statements and you've got building defects.
Oh, yes.
Okay? I think it's a pretty common thread. And vendors probably, you know, whether they're sometimes telling you the truth or not, it really comes back down to the sale. I think that's important when it holds up a contract. You need structure reports, so whether it's for a pergola or a shed.
Yes.
Just touch on that briefly for us.
It's very important. So basically, if the structure is older than 7 years, then that's fine. Okay, the property is sold as it is. Sorry, if you've had, so let's just say you've built a pergola, you've just done your own job, you've built it, put it up, haven't got a permit, bang, done. No insurance, no permit, nothing. You need to provide the purchaser with an owner builder report and a copy of the insurance for the building, the structural insurance. If you don't, that purchaser can pull out any time up until the settlement date.
That's
Of
important.
the contract. It's very, very important.
Explain that again. You can do what, Nicole?
You can pull out of the contract. So you can
You're
end,
legally bound.
as the purchaser, you can end the contract.
Even though it's unconditional.
Even
about
though
to
it's
settle.
unconditional. Well,
It's illegal,
because it's illegal. It's an illegal structure. Yeah.
That's the biggest common thing we have, don't we, Gerald? Is we go through and we go, have you got a permit for this?
No.
Oh, we were told we weren't allowed to. Didn't need it. But no, all that. And I think, oh, God. And you got to go through that process. So,
That's right.
It's very important.
Yeah. So you've got to go
So if
through
you're out
the
there
process.
listening, listen.
The process of contacting the council, applying for a permit, getting them to come out and inspect it, getting them to issue the certificate. A lot of people too. So when you that's another benefit of engaging someone to act on your behalf, because they will point those things out. If you don't have them, then you know you need that certificate of final inspection. If you don't have it, then it's an illegal structure.
We've had cases that, sorry, Rebecca, I'll let you, where we've had a permit, no permit for a pergola, had inspect, they've rolled the dice, they're going to go with it, the vendor, but a potential buyer, who we might have 9 people for an open home, whatever, they've rang the council on the Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Have they got a permit?
Yep.
No, well, then the council rings and then issues them a notice. So that's where it's important.
Yes.
The council will eventually get you regardless if you've got
That's
some
right.
suspicious buyers or buyers are doing their research.
Yep.
We don't know who they are.
That's right.
And that's where people leave themselves open a little bit.
That's right, yeah. And council, I know in the past, council are driving around. If the building inspectors are driving around and they see something that they haven't issued a permit for or they haven't approved, they're going to go back and double check. They write their address down.
Nicole, I reckon they don't drive around as much these days.
Oh, probably not.
I reckon they use the drones. They use those drones or satellite dishes. They refresh every
Yeah,
few
well,
6
you're true.
months.
I think
They
there's
go,
some
that
like
wasn't there
aerial
6 months
mapping
ago.
thing that they use now. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So we've got to
it
save
used
petrol.
to be that they would drive around and just note the addresses
I'm
down.
sure they still
Yeah.
do. Probably quicker to do it that way.
No,
Sorry,
I'm sure they
Rebecca.
just do.
Yeah.
But it is it's a very complex area, and I think you've got to look at every property case by case. Very common if I had $1 for every time a client said to me, but it costs less than $5,000 and I don't need a permit.
Rules change.
They do,
have changed. Typically, if you've got a structure with roof that holds water and it's basically bigger than a garden shed, you need a building permit. So I suppose the issue in selling a property is the vendor statement document, and it's a bit of a loophole in that that section of the Act says has the vendor obtained any building permits in the last 7 years. So technically, not lying if they built something 3 years ago and said, but I haven't got any building permits, but never got permits. But where a vendor will be caught out is in not supplying the owner-builder report, because that's a requirement of the contract.
Yep.
It's a bit of a difficult one at the moment, because a lot of the building surveyors will not supply those owner-builder reports where there's no building permit or final inspection. So it sort of leaves you in no man's land.
It's a catch-22 situation.
So
they're ones that you always difficult.
Yeah,
when
very
no
difficult.
permit or owner-builder report or insurance is.
So I suppose all you can do is, explain it all to the vendor.
And most of the time they're willing to take the risk.
They do, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're fine.
And that's okay.
When they've got the leverage in the buyer's market, when it's a seller's market, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's the other way around. But like I said before, I'll touch on it again, it doesn't mean that the council won't find out.
No. And that's the other risk that the purchaser runs too, is if the council finds out, then they're going to issue the notice to the purchaser, not to the vendor who built the structure and has gone and got his money now and he's happily down the road.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the age of the structure. The money spent on the structure. Some people it might just be a lean-to that it costs them $500 to knock off, and some people go, oh well, for that, I'll prepare to take the risk. But I've seen new houses 2 years old with $20,000 pergolas that unfortunately didn't get permits, and in those instances, you've got to say to the vendor client, this is a major selling point of the home.
Yes.
You're going to have to go through the process of getting it approved.
That's right. Yeah.
It's not as hard as they think it is. That's the problem.
It's pretty easy.
They get advised by a builder at the time who really probably most times can't be bothered getting the permit. No,
exactly.
But they don't realise the rules change so rapidly over 3 or 4 years.
A lot of builders, if they engage a builder, will apply for the permit on their behalf.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've both been in it for a long time.
Yes.
Tell us something a bit extraordinary or out of the ordinary that's happened in your role as a conveyance or legal clerk. That
probably the only thing that I've come across that many people up to this point, I'm going to phrase it very carefully here, many people up to this point would not have dealt with. I had a purchase of a property a couple of years ago where there were squatters in the house. So I was acting for the purchaser. Yep. And I think we're a day or two out from settlement, and he rang me and he said, there's people living in the house. And I said to him, no, it's vacant. And he said, no, I'm sitting here out the front. He said, there's people carting potting mix into this house. And I'm like,
potting mix,
okay. So I got in the car and I went around. It wasn't far from the office. Went around, and sure enough, this taxi pulled up, and these people come out of the taxi with their groceries into the house. They'd been squatting there, so the person who owned the property hadn't been living there for quite some time. There was power connected still, there was gas, water, everything still connected. So we had to make sure these squatters had vacated because the property was sold with vacant
They've got some
possession.
rights too, haven't they? Really?
Squatters.
Yeah. Well, not rights, but it's just a minefield, isn't it? Really?
Oh, yeah. So thankfully I was acting for the purchase. So we just said we're not settling until these people have gone. And then once they were vacated, my client took steps to ensure that no one else would live in the property. That's all I'll say about that one. But that was one that I don't think I'll probably ever come across again, is squatters being in a house. It was really unusual. And no one else in the office had dealt with it. So that was different. That was really,
Wow.
So I, racked my brain for a funny conveyancing story, and I come to the conclusion that there are no funny stories in conveyancing. It's long hours and a lot of stress, but really rewarding. But I will say to anyone that if you've got a large family and you're thinking of going into conveyancing, don't, because you'll be a slave to 3 jobs for the rest of your life.
This is true. Yeah.
I think I'm up to number 7 for my sister. I keep telling her the next one she's paying for that one.
Love jobs.
But
look, every transaction, I find every transaction brings its own unique set of issues. You know, whether they're minor, whether they're major,
Yeah.
It's every
It is.
transaction
Nothing's the
is
same.
different.
Nothing's,
Yeah.
even though it's not the same.
You occasionally get those dream ones that just go from start to finish, and
Yeah.
they're just dreams. They just go smoothly. They are very rare unicorns. Yeah, they don't happen often at all.
Yeah, you deal with a lot of emotion. And,
Similar in sales.
Yeah.
Yes.
No different.
Yeah.
It's a very emotional transaction, people buying and selling a property is,
Especially those people
very-
who have been in their homes
for a long
for
time.
a long time. The people who have raised their families there, who have got the memories there.
So, you definitely have to, sometimes put your counsellor hat on and, sort of massage people through the transaction, because emotions are often running pretty high and people are stressed. And,
More than a conveyancer. More
Yeah.
than an agent.
It's all the same, aren't we? That's it. So,
Wonderful.
Loved having you. It was
Thank you
fantastic.
for having us.
Very
Having us.
informative.
Yes.
I'm sure our audience will really enjoy this podcast today. So,
I hope so.
Rebecca and Nicole, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, guys.
You have a great
Thank
day.
you, ladies.
You too. Great.
the best.
Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe on your favourite podcast platform so you don't miss upcoming episodes. We would love you to share this podcast with your network, and if you have any questions or feedback, please connect with us via our social network or head to gagliardiscott.com.au.